Isolde stood before Ronan, her arms crossed tightly against her chest. Her face was a storm of pain and fury, her voice trembling with the force of emotions barely held in check. "You lied to me," she said, her words slicing through the air like a blade. "You looked me in the eyes, made me believe we had something real, and all the while you were chasing after some fantasy." Her voice cracked on the last word, but she straightened, refusing to show weakness. How could he betray me like this? Ronan's throat tightened. He took a step closer, his hands outstretched in a gesture of pleading. "Isolde, it's not like that. This bond, this pull, it's not something I can control. It's not about you. It's about—" He trailed off, his voice faltering under the weight of her piercing gaze. "It's about her," Isolde finished for him, her voice low and bitter. "Some woman you've never even met. You're willing to throw away everything we've built, everything we've fought for, because of some mystical bond. Do you even hear yourself?" Ronan clenched his fists, his heart pounding. "It's not just a mystical bond," he said, his voice thick with desperation. "It's real. It's primal. I didn't choose this, Isolde. I didn't want this to happen, but it's there, and it's tearing me apart." Isolde's laugh was harsh, devoid of humor. "Tearing you apart? Do you think that justifies what you've done? Do you think it makes it any less of a betrayal?" She took a step closer, her eyes blazing. "You stood in front of me, in front of the pack, and made vows. You promised loyalty. You promised love. Was it all a lie, Ronan?" "No." Ronan's voice cracked as he shouted, the word bursting from him with raw anguish. "I meant every word. I do care about you, Isolde. I care about the pack. But this bond with Lyra, it's something I can't ignore. It's like a fire in my blood, something that's always there, pulling me toward her." "And what about me?" Isolde demanded, her voice rising. "What am I to you now, Ronan? An obligation? A mistake?" Her voice broke, and she took a shaky breath, fighting to keep her composure. "You've broken my trust. You've broken us." Ronan's shoulders sagged, his head hanging low. "I never wanted to hurt you," he said softly, his voice barely above a whisper. "I thought I could find a way to make this work, to honor my bond with you, and still—" He trailed off, the words dying in his throat. What could he possibly say to make this right? Isolde stared at him, her expression hardening. "There is no way to make this work," she said coldly. "You can't split your heart in two, Ronan, and even if you could, I wouldn't want the scraps you'd leave behind. Our union is over." Ronan's breath caught, his chest tightening as her words sank in. "Isolde, please," he begged, his voice breaking. "Don't do this. Don't throw everything away because of my mistake. Let me fix this. Let me prove to you that I still care." Isolde shook her head, her eyes filled with a cold determination. "You made your choice, Ronan. Now you have to live with it. I want a divorce." Her voice was steady now, unyielding. "And I want you to feel the weight of what you've done." Without another word, she turned and walked away, her footsteps echoing in the silence. Ronan watched her go, his heart shattering with each step she took. When she disappeared from sight, he sank to his knees, the weight of his actions crashing down on him. He had lost her, and he had no one to blame but himself. The forest was alive with the sounds of the night, the rustle of leaves in the wind, the distant call of an owl, the faint murmur of a brook. But to Lyra, it all felt ominous, a backdrop to the storm of emotions swirling within her. She crouched in the shadows of her secluded hideout, her ears straining for any sign of pursuit. Kalen's presence was like a dark cloud on the horizon, and she knew he wouldn't stop until he found her. "I have to go," she whispered to herself, her voice barely audible. "I can't stay here, not with him hunting me, not with everything falling apart." A sudden snap of a twig made her heart leap into her throat. She spun around, her muscles tensing, ready to fight or flee. When Ronan stepped out of the shadows, her breath caught in her chest. "Lyra," he said, his voice hoarse with emotion. "Please, don't go." She stared at him, her heart pounding. "What are you doing here, Ronan?" she demanded, her voice sharp. "Haven't you done enough?" Ronan flinched at her words, but he stepped closer, his hands raised in a gesture of surrender. "I had to find you," he said. "I had to make you understand. I made a mistake, Lyra. I let fear and duty cloud my judgment, but I'm here now. I'm choosing you." Lyra's laugh was bitter, her eyes glinting with unshed tears. "Choosing me?" she repeated, her voice filled with disbelief. "After everything?" After you stood by while your pack hunted me like an animal? After you chose her over me?" "I didn't choose her," Ronan said, his voice desperate. "I thought I was doing what was right. I thought I could protect everyone, but I was wrong. I see that now. Please, Lyra, give me a chance to make this right." Lyra shook her head, her expression hardening. "It's too late for that, Ronan," she said. "You had your chance to stand by me, to fight for me, and you let it slip away. I can't trust you, and I can't stay here, not with Keelan hunting me." "I'll protect you," Ronan said, stepping closer. "I'll do whatever it takes to keep you safe. Just don't leave." Lyra's eyes softened for a moment, but then she shook her head, a single tear slipping down her cheek. "I can't," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I have to protect myself now, and maybe you need to learn what it feels like to lose something precious." Before Ronan could respond, she turned and ran, her figure disappearing into the shadows of the forest. He called after her, his voice echoing through the trees, but she didn't look back. Ronan stood there, the cold wind biting at his skin, his heart hollow. She was gone, and with her, his last chance at redemption.